All right, welcome to Bet the Edge, Monday, September 19th. Thanks to everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. I am Jay Croucher. Here's Drew Dinsick. We're going to break down some of yesterday's NFL action, then look at a couple of teams that we think are stock up, stock down, and then we'll get into tonight's games, the doubleheader. Drew, overall, good weekend on the National Football League?
It wasn't good. It was great. It was great, Jay. That was as the three sides I needed the most were Tampa, Miami, which was we're going to get into a little bit more detail, and then of course New England Patriots. All three came through, so I was pretty psyched. And totals were a little ups and down, but sides continuing to crush is keeping me very, very liquid this month of September.
Yes, good that the two that we gave out, the Bucks -2.5, Dolphins +3.5, both got home. Both were looking dicey for a little while, particularly Miami, but ended up doing it both pretty comfortably, at least against the line. But I think clearly the biggest development out of the weekend was Trey Lance going down, just like the biggest development the week before was Dak Prescott going down. This one, even more severe potentially because Lance is done for the season. Not really much movement in the Niners odds with Lance going out. I mean, you look at their odds to win the NFC West, +150, 10-1 NFC, 18-1 Super Bowl. Those are pretty much in the same ballpark as they were when we thought Lance was going to be the quarterback all year. So how are you adjusting your pricing of the Niners now that it's the Jimmy G show?
Okay, so it's fun when we talk about any type of price for any NFL team or any NFL game, and we kind of say, well, that's my fair price, right? And when you say something like that, you're implying that's my median price on a distribution of results, right? That's generally what's going on. Well, the distribution of results for a Niners game used to be as wide, if not wider, than any team in the NFL because of the uncertainty of Lance and because of just in general, like you could expect some days he was going to be amazing. Some days he was going to look like a rookie, right? Now that you switch him out for Jimmy G, the Niners distribution goes from broadest in the NFL to collapses to probably one of the most stable. This is a good veteran team. And if the offensive line continues to improve, if the skill position players get healthy and Shanahan, runs the offense that he wants to run with a healthy Jimmy G, this is now all of a sudden a team that is looking stably in the mix for an NFC, in my opinion. It is clear, at least, that Jimmy G is at worst, kind of a median neutral shift, and then the lows are going to be higher and the highs may be a little bit lower. But this Niners team is probably a buy. And I would expect significantly less volatility.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I agree completely that it's all about how you view this team in terms of the median and the tails. And now I think they're almost less likely to win the Super Bowl, but more likely to win the division with Jimmy G, even though that obviously conflicts a little bit. But their ceiling has to be a little bit compressed because we know that Jimmy G is not going to be He's not going to be one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the league, whereas there were outcomes where Trey Lance could have been that this year. We also know he's not going to be one of the bottom 7 quarterbacks in the league, which Trey Lance also could have been this year. And I think the one thing with Jimmy G, who I think leaves a sour taste in people's mouths because of how his last 6 pass attempts went in the NFC title game, and also just the way he looked at the back end of last season. But he was incredibly banged up last season, and he wasn't the same guy. He had a very low average depth of target. He just looked better yesterday, and I think that we shouldn't project forward to have the guy that you had last year. You should project forward to have a better version of that guy. So I think the Niners, the biggest concern for them now is that if Jimmy G goes down, well, then they are finished, whereas they had obviously this insurance against Lance. But I mean, to me, I think they're better than the Rams right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you made some good points there. The one that was key is Jimmy G is healthy now, but he is one of the most fragile players we've seen at quarterback over the last 5 years. So expecting him to stay healthy through a Super Bowl run is asking a lot of that young man, especially given the state of the interior offensive line for the Niners. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But the Rams were, in my opinion, in the catbird seat for the NFC West because they played the Niners twice early in the season when Lance was still going to be getting his feet under him. You now flip the script, and this is an experienced quarterback going up against the Rams when they're not really clicking on full cylinders at all. I do think that tilts the balance in favor of Niners in the NFC West, and at a price point of plus 150, I think that's a fair bet to make now.
Yep, I agree. And also for teams like Arizona, who are longer, I think this helps their NFC West odds too, just because now you have two teams that are one injury away from just being completely ruined. And the Cardinals, I think, are clearly number 3 in that division, and they're not going to win it without help. But they obviously saved their season yesterday. And now, I mean, the Cardinals, they were at one point last season, pretty late in the season, the favorite to get the 1 seed, which is forgotten often, and Kyler Murray is still pretty good, as he showed yesterday. So they are live as well, but the Niners would be my pick in that division. Now, the Niners play next Sunday night against the the Broncos, in a game where the line has been pretty controversial. It's looking at Broncos minus 1.5. I don't think anyone wants to ride with Nathaniel Hackett against Kyle Shanahan right now. But a reminder that if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, Major League Baseball, on the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. And there is also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome in that game between the Niners and the Broncos in our Sunday Night 7 contest. Now let's get to a couple stock up, stock down teams. Stock up, I think the big winner yesterday were the Miami Dolphins, who probably altered their own perception around the league into bettors more than anyone else, coming back from 35-14 on the road in Baltimore in the last quarter. What's your adjustment on the Dolphins after that?
I think you have to squarely consider that offense as a top 10 offense in the NFL right now. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, both just absolute game breakers. Offensive line playing better than people expected. When they go up against what is perceived to be a good defense like the Ravens, but the Ravens, we know this, they have an Achilles heel, that is they have an issue dealing with speed, and you have a team that is as good as the Dolphins at the skill position players from a speed standpoint, then they're always going to be in the game. I think that the next 2 games could probably set the Dolphins up for kind of coast to a playoff spot if they can pull out wins. They get the Bills next week at home. Bills are going to be coming off of a short week and playing in the heat down in Miami. And then they go at Cincinnati the following week. It's a little early to get too excited about my Miami Super Bowl future. I mean, I don't have any. I'm making a joke. I was kind of like, this is a borderline playoff team, but if they beat the Bills next week and then can hold against the Bengals, all of a sudden the schedule breaks extremely in their favor, and they could potentially go into the bye week with just a pretty outstanding win-loss record. Mike McDaniel is the big stock up, because this team was going to go one way. Like, if he was ready for the the role and responsibility of head coach, then this team was going to be an obvious buy. And to this point in the season, that has absolutely come through.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well, there were obviously questions about Tua's ceiling, but when you have 469 passing yards and 6 touchdowns, that dispels a lot of concerns about what your ceiling is game to game. Tyreek and Waddle, they were the only teammates in NFL history to have 150 plus receiving yards, 10 plus catches, and 2 touchdowns in the same game. And I mean, you called it out when you gave the Dolphins plus 3.5 as the pick last week, that this Ravens team, this secondary, really does struggle with speed, particularly when you've got Peters and Humphries coming off those serious injuries. And I mean, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they looked a lot like Jamar Chase did against the Ravens in those 2 games. And also, I think that the scoreline almost flattered Baltimore in a way,
I agree 100%.
where DuVernay runs the first kickoff back for a touchdown, which is always fluky when you're doing that, and you can't count on that week to week. Xavier Howard dropped a pick 6 from Lamar Jackson as well. Ravens did fumble 4th and 1 at the goal line, so it balances out a little bit. But certainly watching that game, and someone who was trying to cheer home their Lamar Jackson MVP ticket at 20-1, I never felt good in that 4th quarter. And it's not a good sign for the Ravens that when you're protecting a 3 touchdown lead in the 4th quarter, that you give up 2 touchdown drives in less than 90 seconds. So that certainly, I think, adjusts the ceiling, because there was a thought that the Ravens secondary would just be elite this year with the players that they were getting back in the secondary in particular, and how they load up with Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams. But I mean, just quickly, I mean, how much does this change your opinion of the Ravens?
So I think this gives us a good buy low on the Ravens this week.
Okay.
I mean, what the Miami Dolphins have, do the Patriots have speed? No. I mean, like literally, like this secondary matches up extremely poorly against the Bengals and the Dolphins of the world, and it matches up extremely well against the Patriots of the world. So I would expect that they get a pretty quick bounce back here. And if anything, I'm probably upgrading the Ravens offense after that performance. Like
Yes.
Lamar is, we were kind of quietly, what's up with Lamar? Is he not going to run because of the contract? That was sort of in the back of my head. Well, he ran, and he ran just like you remember, so if that is sort of an aspect in their back pocket offensively, and he is developing a little bit of chemistry with these guys, Bateman in particular, at least getting a couple of game breaking plays out of them is going to matter. So I think you have to put the Ravens offense kind of on the fringe top 10 in the NFL right now. And that defense shouldn't be, considered elite, but they're definitely kind of be able to kind of keep a lid on the likes of the Patriots of the world.
Yeah. All right. No respect from Drew Dinsick for the icy legs of Nelson Aguilar following his monster touchdown.
He'll get open, but he's going to drop it. So
yes,
I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah. Well, talking about super fast quarterbacks who can make 79-yard rushing touchdowns happen, Matt Ryan and the Colts, they are the big loser. They look like a team catastrophe. They really should be 0-2 with 2 losses in the division after getting shut out by the Jags, following up their masterpiece in Week 18 last season, getting blown out by the Jags as 16.5-point favorites, much to my chagrin. Now, the Colts before the season, they were as short as like minus 140 to win the AFC South. Now they're plus 160. They're 20-1 to win the AFC, which I would not touch. 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, which I would not touch to an even greater extent. This team looks like an absolute catastrophe. Now, they did have injuries, is the thing. And when you have clusters of injuries, they were missing Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Shaquille Leonard. They had limited DeForest Buckner and Kenny Moore, who managed to play. But the real thing is that Matt Ryan looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league right now. And I think I'm pretty safe in saying that the Colts clearly downgraded in quarterback, as problematic as Carson Wentz could be. I'd much rather have Carson Wentz as my quarterback right now than Matt Ryan.
Yeah. And you bring up some great points there. The Colts, boy, do they need a bounce back. Who do they have this week? Oh, they get to welcome the Kansas City Chiefs to town. And it's pretty easy to overreact when a team goes on the road back-to-back weeks 1 and 2 and underachieves. But I think it's completely fair to aggressively downgrade the Colts right now on a couple of points. Michael Pittman obviously matters a ton. He is, this is a fragile system. They have no redundancy beyond Pittman. So if he is going to be up and down this year or available, unavailable, depending on what's going on with him physically, that's a huge problem because they don't have a plan B in the offensive game plan. Obviously Jonathan Taylor is really the straw that stirs the drink, presumably. But, if you're in a negative game state like they were yesterday, then, he's only he can only do so much. The Matt Ryan being potentially washed is absolutely a storyline you have to pay attention to. But even more than that, like they had a healthy secondary. They had a healthy pass rush yesterday. Generally, I mean, Buckner accepted. And yet the Gus Bradley defense looks bad. And if they're going to be gashed by the likes of Davis Mills and this version of Trevor Lawrence, then, Pat Mahomes coming to town could be an especially brutal wake-up call for this defense. Shaq Leonard may be back at some point. He obviously matters a ton to what that unit wants to do from a cohesive standpoint. But I don't think that's really helping them when scheme-wise you match up really poorly against the elite offenses in the NFL. The Colts schedule gets super, super interesting in October. They play the Titans twice, and they get a second game against the Jaguars. If they don't win all 3 of those divisional games, it's a wrap. And at that point, I'll wrap it up. You got to win all 3 of those games because you've had 2 divisional games and you've got 0 wins. This goes sideways quickly if they do not, kind of specifically rescue those 3 contests. And, if we get to the end of October and this is a 2-3 8 team, I guess it'd be 2-7-1. Then I think Frank Reich's on the hot seat. I think Matt Ryan. I mean, are you still trotting him out there behind a line that can't really pass pro? This is starting to become a very, very volatile situation.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I think if the Titans lose tonight to the Bills, as we expect, I don't think it's crazy to have the Jags the favorite to win the AFC South at that point, particularly if Pittman is going to miss time. I mean, the Colts defense last year, they were plus 14 in turnover differential. That was tied for the best in the entire league with the Cowboys. And that's the one thing that regresses the most. And they were already very, very dependent on basically 2 players on offense, and one of them is out right now, and the quarterback. I mean, as much as Matt Ryan, he didn't have receivers yesterday, that doesn't excuse some of those passes, which were just comically bad, and stuff that we would make fun of and meme out of Mark Sanchez on his worst days. Like, that's what Matt Ryan looked like. So yeah, I think at some point, I don't think it's out of the question that it's the Nick Foles or dare I say it, Sam Ellinger show at some point in Indianapolis in the back end of the season, which for a team that was minus 140 to win its division a couple of weeks ago, that is pretty grim. Okay, not grim is the Matthew Berry Fantasy Football Happy Hour, which I am a co-host of, and we'll be back on Wednesday when I'm back in the beautiful state of Connecticut. But Matthew Berry is back with NBC and RotoWorld, doing what he does best, rolling out his love-hate list, breaking down who to start and sit, and much more. Also, plenty of actionable betting information along the way for sports bettors as well. Matthew, as he has repeatedly demonstrated and published, he was 4 out of 5 on his Sunday Night Football picks last night, which he's very happy about, getting right into the betting. So check out the show weekdays in the afternoon on Peacock at 12 p.m. Eastern, or listen to the show in podcast form wherever you download and subscribe. And also there is the Sunday Fantasy Football pre-game show leading up to kickoff from 11 Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern on Peacock. And the last hour of that is on the main NBC channel, which is incredibly cool. Okay, let's talk Monday Night Football. Couple of big games. I mean, one of them is a double-digit spread, so it doesn't feel as big, but it's still the 1 seed from last year against the Super Bowl favorite this year. So let's start with Titans-Bills. The line is Bills minus 10. The over-under is 47.5. What are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, so we have had 5 primetime games so far this season. Is that right? 5 unders. Yeah. So, and both of these primetime games at least look to be bet to the under, although there's been some late market correction on this Bills Titans over. I'm seeing some of the market makers back up to 48. So a little game day, enthusiasm for points in the Bills game. I in general think that you could see a little bit more of a low scoring game. I mean, the Bills, they obviously had a point to prove, I thought, in week 1. Like, hey, we're going to come out here and give you our, what we've been working on all summer, prove that we are deserving of, Super Bowl favorite status. Like, that looked like a little bit of a message sent. If this this offensive effort is more of a, hey, let's just get a win, I'm not going to be surprised. If they decide not to put Josh Allen at risk by, doing specific design rollouts where he is given the option to run to try to get to the goal line or try to get a key first down. If that stuff's not in the playbook this week, not going to be surprised. They have a huge high leverage game for their division on deck next week with Miami. And so I think this has turned into take the points or pass. And from a total standpoint, I'm going to be watching to see how the first half of this game plays out, because I think there could be a little bit of an overreaction. If Buffalo's offense is doing quite well in the first half of this game, then this could turn into, a little bit of a let's shorten the clock. Let's get out of here with a win type of game in the second half. So second half under might be a fun play. But ultimately, Tennessee's offense is weak. They are going up against a very decent matchup with the Buffalo Bills defensively. Buffalo Bills defense was the best in the NFL last year by the numbers. I think that they returned strength. And the one weakness is some of their cornerback depth. Well, guess what? Tennessee doesn't have to test that: wide receiver depth. So this should be, a Buffalo win, but I would expect that they try to get it done exposing as little as possible.
Yeah, I think the under would be the look here, in that Derrick Henry had an incredible amount of success against Buffalo when they played in prime time last year. He had 143 yards and 3 scores. That was almost kind of the last moment of like real King Henry stuff that we saw last season. But I mean, Derrick Henry running the ball, that's your best friend. If you are an underbetter, it's going to kill the clock. And I don't think that the Titans are going to be, really out there establishing Robert Woods in the passing game. So that would be the look. I will say that the Bills, I think, and this is not the most groundbreaking thing to say, but I do think they have the most just blow other teams out of the water potential in the league, more so than the other 2 Super Bowl favorites in Kansas City and Tampa Bay, who both have one slightly suspect unit, although the Chiefs' defense has looked better than expected. But this Bills team, which has top 3, top 5 defense, and then also clearly one of the most explosive offenses and a proclivity to pass the ball as well, which is what you want if you're taking a double-digit favorite. But if forced, the Bills would be my pick at the spread. I'm completely out on this Tennessee team. That was dreadful what they served up last week. And that division is a nightmare. And meanwhile, the AFC East, which, I mean, might be the best division in football right now, with the Patriots looking pretty good. And also the Raiders and the Broncos not looking too good in what was the purported best division in the league. So I suspect the Bills will roll tonight. Now, the other game, which to me is much more compelling, is the Vikings at the Eagles. This line was moving around a little bit. Now it's back pretty much to where it opened at Eagles -2.5. The total is 50.5. Now, my question here is, does the fact that the Lions looked so good, and particularly their defense, the defensive lines look so good, does that upgrade your opinion of the Eagles in this game just because of how dominant they were offensively?
Well, as someone who has a decent position on Aiden Hutchinson, defensive rookie of the year, I was
done.
I came out of week 1 and I was like, God, I hope the Eagles are the best offensive line in football. And that's possible, right? Like that, they're pass pro. They're kind of some of the key players on that line are just potentially, they're all pros. There may even be a Hall of Famer in there. So it's like, yes, that is a really, really strong unit. They're going up against the pass rush for the Vikings that I rate and I think Eagles probably get a pretty comfortable win here. This is obviously it's Eagles home opener. A lot of enthusiasm about that team right now in Philadelphia in general. Jalen Hurts looked like he has taken a decent step forward this preseason and what we saw from him in week 1. AJ Brown is kind of a disastrous matchup for Patrick Peterson. I mean, Patrick Peterson was decent against the mash unit that Green Bay trotted out there week 1, but now he's got a real deal assignment on AJ Brown, which I think favors Brown. This looks to me like Philadelphia can win in the trenches on both sides of the ball and really dictate things here. I think Minnesota, congratulations for probably one of the more impressive week 1 performances, but I will be more surprised if they back that up with an upset in Philly than I would be if this is a pretty clean Philly win.
Yeah, I would certainly be upgrading the rating as well of the Philadelphia defense, because that was the concern coming out of week 1, that they gave up 35 points to the Lions. But, as you said, what you had like the Lions of your 14th ranked offense or something coming into this weekend. And that was certainly vindicated with how they played against Washington with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who apparently his only peer in the NFL is a guy playing in this game, Justin Jefferson, because he's out of his mind. And that Detroit offense, I think, is just good because they're keeping Jared Goff clean and he's got weapons. So, yeah, I think as well the Minnesota offense, which looked incredible against Green Bay, despite not really putting up a huge point total because they put the Q in the rack after they had such a comfortable lead. I mean, Green Bay's defense looked okay against Chicago, but they could have easily given up 17, 20 points to a team that was down 3 scores at halftime and had 11 pass attempts for the game, which was one of the more baffling stat lines and didn't please my Justin Fields passing yards over. Thank you, Matt Eberflus, for that. But I think one other repercussion of this game is that we've got 2 of the top 4 candidates for Coach of the Year with Kevin O'Connell and Nick Sirianni. One of those guys is obviously going to take a big hit after tonight, because I think in the NFC in particular, if you're going to win Coach of the Year, you may need the 1 seed, and the loser of the game tonight is obviously going to be in a tougher position there. If the Eagles win tonight, I think the NFC East is, they'll be minus 200 to win the NFC East at that point. And if the Vikings win, then they flip favorite in the NFC North, I think, or at least a joint with the Packers. Any last thoughts on this game, Drew?
No, I like your coach of the year takeaway. The other thing I'm keeping a very close eye on is just sort of the general sentiment around Jalen Hurts' performances, because he is the potential MVP spoiler, right?
Yep.
If the Eagles are 15-2 and the 1 seed in the NFC, and people are consistently praising him throughout the year with his performances, then he's going to get more consideration, because right now, at least, I still think of him as sort of he's blocking out anyone else in the NFC from getting that consideration, because he'll get the wins, but not the credit.
Yeah, I think right now my top 4 MVP favorites, which I think is in line with the market now, they're all in the AFC. It's Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, and Herbert. I think Hurts, to your point, is definitely a guy who could spoil, or Tua Tagovailoa as well, if he keeps putting up these ridiculous stat lines. Anyway, that's it for us. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. That is all from Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick. We'll be back tomorrow.